Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we're diving into this explainer to unpack something I find absolutely fascinating, an incredibly ingenious piece of ancient engineering. But actually, scratch that. We're not talking about aqueducts or stone temples here. We're talking about the architecture of information. Long before we had cloud storage or hard drives or literally even written books, how on earth did a massive, highly complex philosophy survive across multiple generations without getting completely corrupted? Well, the answer lies in an ancient organizational structure called the Saṅgīti Sutta. It was basically a brilliant, highly systematic memory hack designed to prevent a whole worldview from just tearing itself apart. To really grasp why a memory hack like this was so desperately needed, imagine looking around your own community and hearing these exact, bitter words. You don't understand this teaching. You're practicing wrong. I'm practicing right. Ouch, right? The source text uses these harsh, barbed words to paint a picture of the violent infighting that actually destroyed a rival sect known as the Jains, right after their leader passed away in the town of Pava. The whole community just completely fractured, with everyone yelling and loudly claiming that they, and they alone, had the exact correct interpretation of reality.
So the stakes for preserving this worldview were literally sky-high. On one hand, you've got the chaos of the splintering Jains, just fighting, quarreling, and honestly leaving their disciples totally disillusioned. But on the flip side, you have this brilliant solution proposed by the Buddhist chief disciple, a guy named Sariputta. His solution was surprisingly simple but profoundly effective, reciting in concert without disputing. Sariputta realized that if you want a teaching to survive a leader's death, you've got to organize it so crystal clearly that there is literally nothing left to argue about. It was, essentially, ancient version control.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The thread of chaos. 2. An ancient memory hack. 3. The ones and twos. 4. The power of threes. 5. Expanding to fours. And 6. The fives and beyond. Let's get right into it.
All right, Section 1. The thread of chaos. The splintering of the Jains in Pava.
Seeing that threat, specifically how the death of the Jain ascetic of the Nyataka clan plunged his followers into chaos over unorganized, broken teachings, they knew they needed a foolproof solution. Which brings us to Section 2, an ancient memory hack, the birth of the numbered matrix.
Section 3, the ones and twos, the foundation of the matrix.
The creation of this whole system actually kicked off with a really relatable, very human moment. The Buddha had been teaching late into the night, his back was getting sore, and he just needed to rest. So, in his absence, Sariputta steps right up to the front of the room and invents this system completely from the ground up, beginning with the ones. The text notes that all sentient beings are sustained by food and sustained by conditions. Think about it. This is the absolute, undeniable bedrock of biological and spiritual reality. If you want to prevent arguments and schisms, you have to start with a truth so fundamental, like basic biology, that literally no one can disagree. It totally primes the community for unity. You're getting hundreds of people to just nod their heads in agreement before the philosophy even gets complicated. It's a brilliant psychological anchor.
Then, from that absolute consensus, we build right into the twos. Here, Sariputta starts categorizing the duality of human nature. For example, he contrasts lack of conscience and prudence directly against conscience and prudence. He also pairs being hard to admonish and having bad friends against being easy to admonish and having good friends. Now, why do this? Well, because by locking these concepts into direct opposites, the human brain creates a natural mnemonic link. It becomes a mental reflex. Just like we naturally associate up with down, grouping moral concepts into binary pairs means remembering one automatically triggers the memory of the other. The whole philosophy just becomes exponentially easier to memorize and recite out loud.
Which naturally leads us to Section 4, the power of threes, categorizing human behavior. So stepping up the complexity from those foundational binaries, we arrive at the threes. And what's truly fascinating here is how the number 3 becomes this incredibly powerful anchor for understanding our deepest motivations. You see, we aren't just looking at black and white opposites anymore. We're mapping out an entire spectrum of behavioral drivers all categorized into these neat 3-part frameworks.
The text creates a really brilliant contrast to outline these drivers. On one side, you have the 3 unskillful roots: greed, hate, and delusion. And then you immediately pair those against the 3 skillful roots: contentment, love, and understanding. Making a massive philosophy easy to memorize means you have to create mental checklists. It's kind of like a troubleshooting guide for the human mind. A practitioner could easily call up the number 3 in their head and just ask themselves, okay, which of these 3 roots is motivating my behavior right now? By organizing the roots of human action into easily recallable groups of 3, the teaching suddenly becomes a highly practical everyday tool for self-reflection.
Section 5. Expanding to force, progressions, and efforts.
As the matrix expands even further into these highly complex progressions of spiritual and mental development, notice how the methodology totally shifts here. Sariputta takes the number 4 and essentially turns it into a step-by-step ladder. It's no longer just a static list of concepts to memorize. It becomes an active practice. It's a direct instruction manual for exactly how to train the mind.
A perfect example of this is what's called the 4 right efforts. Think of it as a highly logical algorithm for the brain. It's a sequence showing exactly how one mental state advances to the next. First, you restrain, meaning you prevent bad qualities from arising. Second, you actively give up, so you throw out the bad qualities that somehow snuck in anyway. Third, you develop. You build and create new good qualities. And finally, fourth, you preserve. You protect the good that you've just built. It is an incredibly practical, foolproof 4-step framework for behavioral change that completely removes any guesswork from the equation.
We also see this exact same active progression in the 4 absorptions, which map out an escalating journey of deep meditation. The first stage is defined by rapture and bliss. The second sheds the placing of the mind, leaving this crystal clear internal clarity. The third stage strips away the rapture, leaving pure equanimity. And finally, the 4th absorption goes entirely beyond pleasure and pain. It's literally like turning down the volume of the outside world, dial by dial. By chunking this deeply abstract, somewhat mystical journey into 4 distinct milestones, Sariputta basically guarantees the map won't be lost or corrupted by individual interpretation.
But, any enduring worldview needs both cosmic truths and practical, almost HR-style behavioral rules to really survive, and the 4s perfectly housed both. Under this same numerical category, we find warnings for everyday life, like the 4 ignoble expressions. This is speech that's false, backbiting, harsh, or nonsensical. So you literally have the most profound, world-dissolving states of meditation living right next door to straightforward rules against gossiping and lying in the community, all perfectly indexed together.
Finally, we hit Section 6, the 5s and beyond, rapid-fire classifications.
Reaching the 5s, the text basically hits terminal velocity. The pacing expands significantly. We start getting these rapid-fire lists that firmly dictate the overarching worldview. These aren't just subtle psychological points anymore, guys. These are the heavy, overarching pillars of the community's entire ethical and spiritual existence.
So here we find the famous 5 precepts. These are the core ethical boundaries, and they are laid out so explicitly that there could be absolutely zero doctrinal dispute about how a person should behave. Refrain from killing living creatures, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and consuming intoxicants. I mean, imagine hundreds or even thousands of people reciting these exact 5 boundaries in unison. The psychological effect of that shared verbal contract is just immense. It acts as an unbreakable social glue, making the thread of the group splintering practically vanish. The text then scales all the way up to map out the entire cosmos with the 5 destinations of rebirth: hell, the animal realm, the ghost realm, humanity, and the gods. With this, the structural index was completely finished. Sariputta took everything from the singular, absolute truth of basic biology in the 1s all the way up to the vast, 5-part destinations of the cosmos, and he locked them into an unbreakable sequence. It was essentially open-source code for the mind, a structure that thoroughly protected their spiritual path from the exact kind of chaos that had destroyed their rivals.
The sheer genius of this ancient memory hack really just cannot be overstated. It was the ultimate insurance policy for an entire system of thought, relying on absolutely nothing but the human mind and the power of communal recitation. So as we wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you all with this final provocative thought. If your worldview is on the line, and all your hard drives, company wikis, and books suddenly vanish tomorrow, how would you organize your deepest truths to ensure they survived?